Hello and welcome to ProLab Studio here at Bird Barrier headquarters. My name is Michael Gallion. I do business development for Bird Barrier, and with me today is
Tony Chachan. I am the senior account manager here, and yes, I'm Michael's co-partner.
the longest term employee here, at seasoned veteran.
Yeah.
You have a ton of experience. Today what we're going to talk about is where not to use optical gel. Now, let me set the stage a little bit. We have a podcast that says how optical gel revolutionized bird control, and it absolutely has. And there are so many uses for optical gel in the world of bird control. The term that I use in training, I love this term that kind of clarifies. Optical gel goes wherever birds place their feet. Birds, like woodpeckers, place their feet on the walls. Therefore, you actually can use optical gel on the walls around the holes. Most birds stand on vertical surfaces, or horizontal surfaces to the ground, parallel to the ground. And wherever they place their feet, if we put optical gel in that position, the birds no longer land there, and you get this great solution. Easy to install, very effective for nesting. It has all these applications. But that doesn't mean it's the best deterrent for every situation.
Correct.
And today, what we want to do is clarify where those places are. When we say it's not always that we should not use it there, it's just that there's a better solution that you could use instead. So with that in mind, Tony, what is the most common place where you shouldn't use it that people might think about using it?
Just off the top of my head, when people come to me or send me photos of a big industrial building, let's say a large industrial type of a building, and they have a specific type of bird that's creating most of the problems, but there's other birds as well, but there's more than one species on this particular area. Let's say it's a ledge. If we're dealing with turkey vultures, a lot of times, because of their size and their height and how far away their head is from the actual ledge, how tall they are, they're not going to be affected by the smell, and they're not, a lot of times, not going to be affected by the visual aspect of it as well. And turkey vultures are just rank birds anyway.
Yeah,
right? They're gonna, you know, they land on spikes, they tear them up and use them for nesting material.
Yeah.
So. For when we're dealing with turkey vultures, a lot of times I'm not going with optical gel in the specific. I'm going to try to use Flex Track where I can, and I'm also going to try to use Tower Guard where I can.
So the deterrent in general, like optical gel, is multisensory, and the combined exponential power has to outweigh the force that a bird will come to it with. And a turkey vulture just is equipped with a lot more firepower to counter something like optical gel. They, as a matter of fact, you mentioned Flex Track, but I have one guy who claims that he saw a turkey vulture ripping apart a shock system, getting the 7,000 volts, and was getting like smoke coming off of its beak, and it was still fighting. Like it was like, and I'm like, well, I don't know about the smoke coming off the beak because there's just a little, a low current shock. But the point is that they're badasses, right? The turkey vulture, they're disgusting. They vomit on their legs as part of their protective to get rid of bacteria. That's why their head and neck don't have feathers. They get covered in bacteria because they eat dead things. And so look, that bird is a nasty, the smell, gosh, have you ever smelled worse bird filth than the vomit and all that crap that comes from turkey vultures? And you understand why the customers won't themselves.
Yeah, right.
So there's a great example. So you're going to use shock, you're going to probably use Tower Guard. Right? So optical gel, we won't recommend for that situation with turkey vultures. But you mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm going to catch something you said, but the big industrial, was it the fact that turkey vultures at a big industrial complex, or is there something about just let's say turkey vultures weren't at a large industrial complex? Are there places where you still would use optical gel in that situation?
For turkey vultures?
No, we're talking about other birds. I'm wondering, when you said the industrial setting.
Well, the reason why, a lot of times when I say industrial, I'm thinking of large buildings, tall buildings.
Yeah.
You know, turkey vultures, like they migrate.
All right, so you are talking specifically about the environment where we tend to find turkey vultures. What I see, and Ray is our East Coast rep with Birdberry, and he covers the Gulf states, and that's where we see a lot of turkey vultures. So he is using a lot of tower guard in those settings for turkey vultures, and a lot of times they're involving residential, believe it or not, like in trees in the yards, and then they cover the patios and the walkways and just the amount of bird droppings. And then you don't ever just have one. And as Ray pointed out, you get 12 or 13 of them, and for miles, the other turkey vultures in the area are drawn. Their sense of smell is unique. They can smell dead carcasses from a long way. They smell each other's. Where one gathers, they figure there's a carcass nearby, and that's why they have this tend to flock together in their draw, which is kind of unique about those birds. Besides turkey vultures, so let's talk about other situations. Well, I can think of, when you said industrial complex, if there's a bunch of sporadic nesting in these nebulous structures, I find the optical gel can be very effective.
Yes.
But there comes a point where if that whole area, which has this infinite possibility of nesting areas, it's going to be more cost effective to net that off. And there's many times that applies with netting.
If you're in a non-snow region.
Okay, well, there's a factor you got to consider, right?
So you have to consider that. You can't throw a horizontal net on the rooftop of a building if you live in Utah.
Correct.
Or if you're in Minnesota.
Correct.
Just because of the snow factor. But there's another situation, like a lot of times, let's say we're dealing with gulls.
Yep.
Optical gel is very effective with gulls. It's great with gulls. But if you have a rooftop that's 100 by 200 foot, and let's say the customer doesn't want to use daddy long legs, doesn't want to go with grid wire, wants to go with optical gel, that would be a tough thing to do.
It'd be a tough thing to do, but it's all about cost, right? At the end of the day, if the grid wire system cost, let's say $120,000 to install, and instead, they decide that maybe $40,000 worth of optical gel, it can be done. It's just that, daddy long legs at that point possibly would be less than the $40,000 to solve that problem. These are all the pros and cons of different deterrents, and especially optical gel. We have a lot of people that really only use optical gel, like they built their whole bird program around this. But they will eventually hit some limitations. Now, a couple obvious things I should mention about optical gel that people wished it could be used for is like solar panels. Well, it goes where the birds place their feet. You cannot reach 12 feet under a solar array to where they are, and even if you could, the pattern would cost so much to cover the underside of the underside of the solar panels that it renders it impractical. This is where, by excluding the outside perimeter of the solar panel using a kit with PVC mesh, works very effective. Now, the combination, we talked about multisensory earlier. The combination of using optical gel with the PVC kits for solar is very effective, because some places like Arizona, after you do the PVC mesh kit around the solar panel, there will be shadowed areas on one side. And sure enough, there's 12 or 14 of them lined up in a row, where after they were excluded, they're just desperately trying to get back under, and they choose the shady spot. Well, now putting optical gel along that 12-foot section, boom, they're gone from there. And then, so there's but placing the optical gel around the perimeter without PVC mesh isn't going to do anything. We've experimented. We wish it would work. Same thing with open dock doors. This started off right away. I got pictures of people.
Oh, right.
Right, the open dock
Yes.
door, and they just put it around the perimeter. It's like, wait a minute, the birds don't land on the door opening, folks,
Right.
okay? It's not where they're placing their feet.
Right.
They're gonna fly right through that zone. It doesn't create, some,
Force field.
Right, force field. It doesn't create, a diminishing open airspace. So that's not how you'd want to use it. One area that I'm cautionary about using, because I've seen too many people not effectively use optical gel, and that is on roof returns. So you get these little overlapping areas of a roof, and the bird gets tucked up under there, especially if that little tucked up area has vent space where it can go through to the attic. I will see people use optical gel and have failures because they're not excluding the far reaches where the bird is actually going, whether it's really deep in that recess or in through the attic. So the combination of exclusion up
Right.
deep in that air panel and then optical gel in front of that with proper cleanup can be very effective.
Right.
But if there's a limit to how far that roof return goes and you can see where it terminates,
Right.
if you clean it and give it a really healthy, tight pattern, it can be very effective there.
Yeah, and I would always say to the installer out there that's thinking about using optical gel in situations like that, if you have any questions, it's really a great idea to take a picture of that spot and send it to
Yeah,
us.
of course.
Get a second opinion. We'd love to help you make sure that you don't have any issues.
Another area that I should mention is high dust areas, like
Yeah, right.
sawdust, right? Like
Yeah.
there are places where there's a lot of dust generated. There was one facility, I forget what they did.
You remember that one?
What was
that
the-
was back in the early
Was
days.
it flour? I can't remember. There was.
They had a bunch of loading dock doors, and we put it all over. But that dust, it was a dirt road. The
Oh,
dirt
okay.
had an effect on
Yeah.
the optical gel.
And especially if there's enough buildup and it becomes so thickly encrusted with dirt,
Yeah.
now the surface is rendered useless. In other words, it has no light reflecting quality, the scent is covered, and there's enough dust that
Yeah.
the touch factor, all they have to do is put a little nesting material on top, and now they can resume and reclaim the area. So those are some of the areas. Is there any other area we've left off?
Well,
there?
some people, the other thing about optical gel is if you're placing it in an area, let's say you're dealing with a place that has a high aesthetic content to it, right? You're at the front door of a Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah.
And, you don't, sometimes optical gel is aesthetically not the right product for that situation.
Right,
You know what I mean?
yeah, right, yes.
There's sometimes that happens. So optical gel checks off a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it's
man.
funny because now we've gone through this, and I mean we've shut down optical gel in a few areas, but there's still hundreds and maybe thousands of places where it can still be
Oh.
used. But one that you touched on early, or in a previous episode, we were talking about the egrets, the flamingos.
Yeah.
So taller birds that can get up high. Well, there's a whole different strategy, and
Right.
this reminds me also of grackles. How grackles are famous, especially through Texas and other regions, Arizona. We get a fair amount of them here in California. But grackles are different in that they'll nest off-site in trees in those areas, and then they come in and they linger around food areas, and you're dealing with open space. So I have seen optical gel work effectively for nesting in the trees, believe it or not, by
Yeah.
zip tying into the crotch
Sure.
of the tree where the nest exists. I've seen that work very well. But eagle eye sometimes, or reflectors in combination with those, are a better solution. So in the way that we use optical gel for sparrows, pigeons, starlings, you don't use it in the same way for grackles, for example.
Well, you can't use it to deter a bird from going to food, right?
Right.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can't, on these outdoor eating establishments where grackles
Yeah.
are on the back of the chair, as soon as you get up, they go and jump on your plate and grab a French fry. There's really nothing that can stop that.
That's
you know?
correct. And it kind of reiterates the power factor. Like we talk about a turkey vulture overwhelming the power of the deterrent, but another factor that comes in with other birds, The draw factor, if it's so high, like food for survival,
Right.
then that makes the product a little weaker in that setting. And food, you're right.
Right.
Like, even though we've seen videos where people place optical gel around
Yes.
a little grain of food,
Yeah.
look, that's not what it's used for. It's not going
Right.
to be really effective. And throwing food in to test the product isn't a proper use of the product either. So, hopefully this helps clarify. Optical gel has absolutely revolutionized bird control, but it does have its limitations to a certain degree. Those are the things that we covered here. If you have found situations where you have tried optical gel, but you tried something else with better effect, let us know.
Yeah.
We're wide open to improving the product. Things like you see here, the click mount for optical gel came from customers, not from us. You had
Yeah.
problems that needed to be solved. We innovated. We want to continue to innovate. If there are better ways to solve birds, we will figure it out. That's our job. That's what we're good at. That's what we live for. So that covers kind of the basics of where not to use optical gel. My name's Michael Gallion. This
I'm
is
Tony Jeton.
Tony Jeton.
Thanks.
We appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to doing more of these podcasts. If you have ideas for additional podcasts, let us know. We will cover any subject that relates to modern bird control.
Modern bird.
We'll see you next time. All right.